If you have not heard, Sienna and her husband Evan are expecting their first child, so we're excited for them. I said, Sienna, how old are you? You're having a baby? No, she's so amazing, one of our great leaders. This mic's a bit hot. If we can bring it down just a little bit, that'd be awesome. I had the opportunity to go to that trip in Israel. It was life-changing to get baptized in the Jordan River, to go to the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus said, not my will, your will be done. It brought me to tears. It gave me chills. Or that might be the air conditioning pumping right now. But it was just something about being in the Holy Land where Jesus walked. And we know for in fact, I said, I want to know, is there one place we know 100% this is where Jesus stood? And there is in fact one place for certain in Jerusalem at the temple, this stone where Jesus had to walk through. I was like, man, that is amazing. So it's coming up. So if it's something on your heart, it's pretty expensive. So start to save now and plan and prepare. Let's stand for the reading of God's word. We're in Romans chapter 10 today. Our title is Seek and Save. We're going to spend the next 2 weeks talking about evangelism. The word of God, it says this, my dear family, the longing of my heart and my prayer to God on their behalf is for their salvation. I can testify on their behalf that they have a zeal for God, but is not based on knowledge. They were ignorant, you see, of God's covenant faithfulness, and they were trying to establish a covenant status of their own, so they didn't submit to God's faithfulness. The Messiah, you see, is the goal of the law. He is the end of the law, so that covenant membership may be available for all who believe. Available for who? For all who believe. Red and yellow, black and white, Jew and Gentile, all who believe. Moses writes, you see, about the covenant membership defined by the law, that the person who performs the law's commands shall live in them. But the faith-based covenant membership puts it like this. Don't say in your heart, who shall go up to heaven? In other words, to bring the Messiah down. Or who shall go down into the depths? In other words, to bring the Messiah up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we proclaim. Because if you profess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Why? Because covenant membership comes by believing with the heart, and salvation comes by professing with the mouth. Friends, I have just read one of the greatest scriptures in the entire Bible, and I testify today that all of its words are true. You may be seated. You may be seated. Let's have a quick review today. Friends, who is the author of Romans? The Apostle Paul, formerly known as Saul, who had a radical encounter with God on the road to Damascus. His life was never the same. And we look at Paul because we want to look at the characteristics of his life, put it to our life, and see, have we also had an encounter with the risen Savior? Another question, who are the recipients of this letter? Anybody? Jews and Gentiles are the recipients. And why is Paul penning this letter? Answer, there is division in the church. How did that happen? Well, one of the Roman emperors, Claudius, expelled all the Jews out of Rome. You have to leave, you bunch of rebel rousers. And that lasted about 5 years. After 5 years, they were welcomed back into the city, and the Jews found a church that was very different from when they were first there, because Gentiles, non-Jews, were running the church. They found a church that was very different in custom and in practice, and as a result, there was church division. Question for you this morning. Have you ever seen a church fight? You've heard about the Bloods and the Crips? Have you heard about the Baptist and the Pentecostal turf war that takes place, right? I tend to be a Presbyterian Pentecostal, but I've seen many church fights during my time in the ministry, close to 20 years. I remember when I was pastoring at a church in the South Bay and we were selecting a brand new worship leader. Watch out, baby. Take a microphone from someone and the gloves come off. And we were trying to figure out who was the next worship leader. There were many great options, a long tenured individual and a shorter tenured. And the one who was there a shorter amount of time was selected to be the next worship pastor. And I remember the long tenured worship leader went from praising the Lord to cursing out someone, gossip and division. I remember being at Azusa Pacific University. Any APU students in the house today? And they were trying to implement a gospel ban into the chapel services, a small minority of individuals. It did not go too well for the larger student body, and the gospel band was run out of town. I remember being at the Concord campus when they changed the name of Calvary Temple to the Bay Church, and there was almost a riot on Willow Pass on Aurora. And these are some of the things taking place in the Church of Rome. Division and fighting. What are they fighting over? Well, who are the real people of God? And you need to observe the Sabbath. The Gentiles say, no, we don't. And you need to have dietary restrictions. And they said, no, I like bacon. And they said that you need to be circumcised. And they said, no, we ain't. And this division was taking place in the church over and over. And this is why Paul is writing this letter. He is writing for two main reasons, if you're taking note. Number one is this: to bring a divided church together. And he wants the Church of Rome to be healthy so that they can be a staging ground to support him so that he can do missionary work to the location of Spain. This is why he writes the letter, to bring unity to this church, and he wants this church to support him so that as he does his missionary work, he can bring the gospel of Jesus west to Spain. Which brings us to our first application today. Ephesians 4:3 says this: make every effort. How much effort? A little effort? Every effort. When you feel like it? No, every effort to guard the unity that the Spirit gives. You know this principle, but can I reiterate it for you as we start this beautiful Sunday morning? Friends, a house divided cannot stand. A marriage divided cannot stand. A family divided cannot stand. And this is why Paul is writing to get these people to get along. Because here is what you're going to realize. This is how the world will know that we belong to Jesus Christ, if we have love one for another. And he's trying to preserve the unity. He wants this church to be healthy and strong. Therefore, it needs to be unified. And my request for all of us here today is we need to examine our preferences and realize they're just preferences. We all have preferences. If it was my preference, we probably sing gospel and hymns every Sunday. But that's just my preference. It's not right or wrong. If it was my preference, we probably have one service and not 4 services. But it's not my preference. It's what's best for the church at large. What do we need to do to impact people that are still far from Jesus Christ? So we lay down our preference, and it's something we have to continually guard and make every effort. Being at a church that is multi-site, being at a church that has multiple communicators, you constantly need a fight to keep unity together. Because people, and this isn't wrong, but we have our preferences. I like this campus better than that campus. I like this preacher better than that preacher. I like this worship leader better than that worship leader. And there's nothing wrong with your preference, but it is simply a preference. But I want to give you a little secret. Every church, every pastor, every worship leader is one big fat sinner, including myself. Including myself. We're simply one beggar trying to find another beggar where to find bread. And this is why Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. And the only person who matters is God who gives the increase. He is the hero of the story. We are simply temporary custodians of a sacred trust. So it's okay to have our preferences, but don't let the preferences impact our unity. And let me tell you why this is so important. As Paul wanted the Church of Rome to be a staging ground to support his missionary work to Spain, I want the Brentwood campus to be a staging ground to provide missionary work to all the Bay Area. This is why we need unity. It's bigger than any one of us. We have 13 and a half acres right here, and only a small portion is being utilized. Why not build a compassion center on these 13 and a half acres that provides medical help, that provides psychological help, that provides food and clothing and assistance for immigration? Why not build a premier high school, kindergarten through senior year? Do you know the most impactful years for evangelism is between kindergarten and high school? Why not build it? Why not have a sports complex and soccer fields where the community can come and celebrate and this area be a light to all the East Bay? It's not a coincidence that God has put us right at the gate, the first place you see driving over that scary pass right there. Why not here? Why not now? Why not us? And that is why this past Thursday, from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m., we were crying in this room out to God, saying, Father, let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Is anything impossible for God? And the answer is no. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we're going to go boldly to the throne of God, knock on heaven's gates and say, your kingdom come, your will be done. Hallelujah. Back to our passage. Romans 10 verses 1 through 2, it says this, my dear family, the longing of my heart and my prayer to God on their behalf is for their salvation. I can testify on their behalf that they have a zeal for God, but is not based on knowledge. Paul's pen is spilling out his emotions. His heart is broken. He is weeping on behalf of his people, his countrymen, the Jewish people. The Jews, they have a zeal for God because to them was given adoption, to them was given the glory, to them was given the patriarchs, to them was given the law, but they're having a difficult time seeing how Jesus fits with all of this. Why are they struggling with where Jesus fits in all this? A couple of reasons. No Jew was expecting a crucified Messiah. A crucified Messiah was a failed Messiah. In their mind, they're thinking Exodus. God is going to do another Exodus. He's going to smash Egypt and send plagues and overthrow Pharaoh, and we are going to be rescued. So when Jesus died, they're thinking, this ain't it, because Rome is still here and they're still an emperor. They're having difficulty. They have a zeal for God, but lacking knowledge. Why were they having such a difficult time? They were expecting a conquering king, a David, a Solomon, where all the nations of the world will come to Israel and pay homage like the Queen of Sheba did to Solomon. They're having a difficult time because no Jew was expecting a resurrection in the middle of history. The Jews believed that resurrection was at the end of time and everyone would participate in it. No one was expecting one person to rise from the dead in the middle of history. And his heart is breaking. He knows they have a zeal for God because who else had a zeal for God? Saul did. He had such a zeal for God that he was persecuting the church. He was there when Stephen was getting stoned. He was holding the coats. a zeal for God, but it was misplaced. Many Jews believed they were guaranteed salvation because of their pedigree, because they were related to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They had the Torah. We don't need anything else. And Paul is saying, no, no, no. Jesus is the end of the law. The Messiah is the goal of the law. Jesus is the telos nomos Christos, the fulfillment of the law. And Paul is saying, you're looking to your word to give you life. Let me tell you something. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's Jesus Christ. He is the living Word. And He is what you've been waiting for your entire life. Paul's longing, what breaks his heart, what keeps him up at night, the burden in his belly is on behalf of his brothers and sisters' salvation, which brings us to application number 2 today. What is the longing of your heart? What do you desire more than anything else? What gets you up every morning? Anybody see the movie Pirates of the Caribbean? There was a couple of them. I really enjoyed those movies, maybe because I'm a Raider fan and a pirate logo, and I'm a swashbuckling liar. I'm not sure why. But there's this interesting scene in the Pirates of the Caribbean where he's given this compass, this magical compass, and if you open it up, it points to what you want more than anything in life. And every time Captain Jack Sparrow opens the compass, it points to one of two things. It either points to rum or it points to women. And these are the things that he wants more than anything in life. I'm curious, if you were to receive a compass that pointed to what you wanted most in life, what would that thing point to? Would it be a house on a hill? Would it be a 1963 Lincoln Continental drop top, white walls? That's what mine would point to. Well, you open that bad boy up, where would that compass point to? One of my favorite things to do on Sunday is to spend time with you, and the more time we spend together, the more we see what makes us tick. And according to one Forbes article entitled "The Top 8 Things That People Desperately Desire But Can't Seem to Attain," it provides insight to what drives so many of us. And the list probably won't surprise you. On that list was happiness. Anyone here desperately want happiness? Money, fulfillment, confidence, joy, peace, and freedom. And these things are not bad things. These are things that God wants us to experience. And maybe we've experienced these different items in different levels throughout our life. But for those of you who desire and have yet to attain some of these things, I just want to ask a question. Is it possible that we're looking in the wrong place? Remember that country song, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in all the wrong faces? Is it possible I'm looking for happiness and joy and peace and money and fulfillment in the wrong places? If you have yet to experience that, can I suggest something? Open up the Word of God. The living, God-breathed, Holy Spirit fire of God that has the words pertaining to life and godliness. Friends, you want happiness? Go to the Sermon of the Mount, and Jesus says, happy are those who mourn. Happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Happy are the meek. You want joy? Well, friends, that's a fruit of the Holy Spirit. You want love? Well, for God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, and we love because He first loved us. You want fulfillment? Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life abundantly. You want fulfillment? You want peace? You want His presence? Well, in His presence, there is fullness of joy. Perhaps we're looking for things, but we're looking in the wrong places. Friends, I want to let you know something. People are going to let you down. As good as they are, as amazing as my wife is, as amazing as your husband is, they are going to let you down. But the Bible says there's one who sticks closer than a brother. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. He is the answer to what we are looking for. So I ask you, what do you desire more than anything? I love talking to you guys in between services, and I get to see what makes some of you fired up. For some of you, when I talk to you and you love fishing, every time I talk to you, we're talking about fishing, and boy, I enjoy fishing. You're talking about your Baja trip coming up. You're talking about your Alaska trip coming up. You're talking about the new boat that you've purchased and your new rod. And I'm like, this is amazing. You're passionate about fishing. I'm passionate about sushi. This is a match made in heaven. Let's get together, and I think we're going to be okay, right? I talked to some of you, and you are passionate about shopping. You love fashion. You love your hair done, nails done, everything did. I experienced my first pedicure, and it was interesting. I don't know if they do this to you, but they brought out a cheese grater. They were I said, well, I'm sorry I have flat feet. I don't know what to tell you. That was a new experience. And some of you love to shop and you love the grooming process. If shopping was an Olympic sport, boy, you'd have a gold medal around your neck. Some of you are on repeat customer at the Target pickup line. I know I call my mom on the weekend, Mom, what are you doing? I'm at Valley Fair. Again, Valley Fair? You love to shop, passionate about shopping. Some of you, you're passionate about your sports teams. You love your sports. You know every player, you know every position, you know every stat, you know everything going on. Some of you even bring creepy dolls to the game. Now, who does such a thing like that, right? We're so passionate about a variety of things, and these passions are good. They're not wrong. God gave us all these things to enjoy. But I want to ask you a question this morning. Is there room in your hearts for people far from God? Is there a little bit of passion left over for people who have yet to heard this amazing message of Jesus Christ? As we've spent 17 weeks in the book of Romans, we got 9 more weeks to go. I can't help but notice what Paul is passionate about. I keep seeing a theme over and over again. I am not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes. I can't help but notice a theme over and over again, like in chapter 9. He says, I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart. I wish that I myself were cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers. Friends, when we have a real encounter with the risen Jesus, this starts to become the desire of our heart. And the things of the world start to grow strangely dim. This isn't the first time I've heard someone say, I want my brothers to be saved so bad, and if not, cut me off. Where else have you heard that in the Bible? Exodus chapter 32, Moses. God is telling him these people are rebellious, they're stiff-necked. You leave them for a little bit, and now they've built a golden calf. I'm going to wipe them out. And Moses says, no, forgive them. And if you don't, blot my name out of the book. We see this in Esther chapter 4, where people are about to be destroyed. And she's encouraged by Mordecai to go to the king. And she says, that's against the law. That could result in death. But there was this burden in her heart. So she said, pray and fast all day. Tomorrow I'll go in front of the king, even though it's against the law. And if I perish, I perish. I think about Stephen getting stoned in the New Testament. And he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I'm noticing a passion of Paul over and over again in our passage today, chapter 10. He says this, my dear family, the longing of my heart and my prayer to God on their behalf is for their salvation. A question we need to ask ourselves today, are we making room with all of our other passions to be passionate about people far from God. These things are not bad, they are beautiful. God has given it so that we can enjoy and have life and laugh and dance and experience memories. But I'm noticing as I look at Paul, he had a single focus. God, just one more soul. God, just one more Jew. God, just one more Gentile. Just one more person. And if I'm beat, if I'm whipped, if I'm shipwrecked, I do not care. One more soul. God, give us hearts to make room for people. Give us hearts to make room for people that we don't even care or don't even like. This is what our perfect example Jesus did in Luke chapter 19. Jesus made room for some unexpected people like Zacchaeus. He was unexpected because he was a tax collector, and tax collectors in that day were hated. Imagine Jews collecting money from fellow Jews for an occupying foreign enemy. Tax collectors were seen as traitors, cheating their own people, padding their pockets. And Pastor John MacArthur states that tax collectors had to keep their distance away from any group because they were so hated, essentially cut off from the Jewish community and place of worship. And what I find so profound, all these people around Jesus, and yet Jesus walks up to this wee little no good lying, cheating traitor, and he says, Zacchaeus, I have to go to your house today. Why is that? Because Jesus was a friend to sinners. He came to seek and to save the lost. You see, it's not the healthy that need a physician, it is the sick. And friends, every single one of us have a sickness that only Jesus can cure. How are we doing making room for people different, for people far and wide, people who look different, people who talk different, the unexpected, maybe people that make us sick? Yet Jesus came to do this. I love this quote by Billy Graham. He said this, evangelism has always been the heartbeat for our ministry. It is what God has called us to do. C.T. Studd, he said this, some wish to live within the sound of a chapel bell. I wish to run a rescue mission within a yard of hell. As I was studying that, I got out of my seat. I said, glory, holy smoke. That'll fire somebody up right there. Say, if I can't get a Presbyterian nod, it would have been a Pentecostal clap from you guys, right? I read that and said, my goodness, I don't want to play it safe. Stay within the four walls of the church. Put me within a yard of hell. Kirk Cameron, he said this, if you had the cure to cancer, wouldn't you usher it? You have the cure to death. Go out there and share it. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about evangelism. We're going to camp in Romans 10. We're going to dive deep into this topic, and I want to share with you some beautiful things on evangelism that I was taught by the late Dr. Timothy Keller, who did a phenomenal work in New York City, and countless thousands of lives were impacted because of his evangelism. Starting today and next week, we're going to look at this, obstacles to evangelism. Where does evangelism happen? What is evangelism? And how to do it. We're just going to look at the first one today and the next three next week. And this is perfect timing because as a church family, we're getting ready to launch 4 services next Sunday. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's as much Spanish as I know. So 4 services. Why are we doing this? Because we're making room. And who would have thought the most unlikely circumstances, starting in a pandemic, outside in the cold right there with a little white tent, and now 4 years later, close to 700 people were going to 4 services, all to the glory of God. Jesus said he will build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail. But friends, I want to let you know the success of this next season is not dependent on my preaching. It's not dependent on the quality of our worship. It's not dependent on a non-existent coffee shop that I look at every day. It's not dependent on a program or curriculum. It's dependent on this, write it down. Every single person evangelizing. Every person minister. The success of this church in this new season going forward is every single one of us opening our mouths and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And if you're wondering, where do I do that? Well, Tim and Tammy, do you guys have a job?
Yes.
Okay. Do you guys live in a neighborhood community?
Yes.
Do you guys have family?
Yes.
Do you guys have friends?
Yes.
That's where you evangelize right there. Your sphere of influence. Whoever God puts in front of you, especially those closest to us. The success of our church going forward and having 4 services and making room is every single one of us participating and not spectating. Every single one of us opening our mouths and say, can I share with you what God has done? But let's be honest, sometimes there are obstacles to that. Sometimes we are hesitant. And I want to look at 3 obstacles to evangelism. Obstacle number 1 is this. Reasons why people don't share their faith is the fear of rejection. Maybe you think, I don't have the right words. I don't have enough Bible knowledge. I don't know the how to. We're afraid of looking like religious fanatics. We're afraid of offending or being rejected. But I read this interesting article entitled, Why Don't We Share the Gospel? By Dr. Reed, and he tells the story of Jia Jiang, who feared rejection so much that it consumed his life. So he decided to face his fear with an experiment. For the next 100 days, he was going to be rejected in different ways. He asked a stranger for $100. He asked another stranger to let him plant a flower in his backyard. He asked a burger place for a burger refill. And to all these requests, he received a no, and a heck no. But he quickly learned something. The more he was rejected, the more he realized that rejection wasn't as bad as he feared. He also learned from the encounter about people and about himself. And one day he went to Krispy Kreme, which there's a special today if you're wondering. And he asked an employee to make an Olympic-shaped ring with different colors. And to his surprise, the employee said, why not? And the video of her creation went viral, reaching over 5 million views online. Gia's experience soon made him a sensation. He got asked to speak at a TED Talk, which now has over 6 million views. He then wrote a book on his experience. In fact, today he's requested to speak so much that he has to reject people's requests for his time. You see, no one loves rejection, and I wish I could tell you how to share Christ so that no one would reject you, but that's not realistic. The gospel is an offense to many, and we need to understand that rejection comes with being a follower of Jesus Christ. Jesus himself said that a prophet is without honor in his own hometown. But friends, we need to overcome this fear. And when the gospel gets inside of you, the fear of rejection and pride goes away because we received the gospel. We were saved by grace, not because of our goodness, our morality, our performance, our wisdom. We were all saved because of Jesus Christ's sacrificial love on the cross. Not our performance, but his performance. So if the worst thing that's going to happen to us in the Bay Area is someone thinking we're weird or losing a job, friends, let me remind you, our brothers and sisters around the world are being killed for their faith in Jesus Christ. I think we can be okay with someone saying, no, thank you. Reason number 2, why do we have challenges sharing the gospel? Well, pessimism. Pessimism, we have a default thinking, well, that person would never become a Christian. There's no way. They're a Raider fan. They're not going to accept the gospel of Jesus Christ. You see, we judge people. That's not the kind of person who becomes a Christian. They live over here and they do that and they say this and they work in that industry. Yet Romans 3 says we are all so alienated from God that none of us would seek him on our own. Unless God draws us to him, we would never become a Christian. Nobody has the ability to see God unless God draws them to him. So friends, we need to stop categorizing, making assumptions, thinking that people are too far from God. Hear this from your pastor. No one is too far from God. No one. No one is too far from God. And our job is to simply throw seed. What is seed? The gospel of Jesus Christ. And Jesus lets us know right up front that some people are going to reject the gospel. Some seed are going to be plucked by birds. Some seeds are going to fall away because of the cares of the world. Some seeds are going to start strong, but they're not going to last over time. But friends, you just keep throwing seed because you never know that one time it's going to produce 30, 50, 100-fold. And who knows, maybe you impacted the next Billy Graham. You just continue to throw seed and let God give the results. Fear of rejection, pessimism, indifference. Indifference. If we don't have a desire to and a history of sharing the gospel, it's a hard issue. To the degree we truly grasp the gospel, we will share it. Love will find a way. I read these quotes by famous church fathers. As I read them, they were very convicting, but I believe we need to hear it in this day and time. Charles Spurgeon said this: every Christian is either a missionary or an imposter. George Whitefield said, God forbid that I should travel with anybody a quarter of an hour without speaking of Christ to them. D.L. Moody said, when a man is filled with the word of God, you cannot keep him still. If a man has got the word, he must speak or die. When I heard D.L. Moody say that, I couldn't help but think of the prophet Jeremiah, who says, God's word are like fire, shut up in my bones that I can't keep quiet. And this is something we need to ask the Holy Spirit to do to us. Holy Spirit, give us your fire to see each person as a beautiful child of God that needs to hear the good news of you. I end with this, Matthew 18:12 through 15. It says, if someone has 100 sheep and one of them wanders off and goes missing, what will he do? He'll leave the 99 on the hillside and go off after the one that's missing, won't he? And when eventually he finds it, I'll tell you the truth, he will celebrate over that one more than the other 99 who didn't go missing. It's the same thing with your Father in heaven. The last thing he wants is for a single one of these little ones to be lost. The last thing he wants is for one single little one to be lost. The last thing he wants is for one person not to have salvation. It's his will that all should come to salvation and that none should perish. I thought about a story that happened to me early on. First time being a father about 11 years ago. My daughter was tiny. She wasn't able to crawl or walk, or she just would smile. Have a picture of my firstborn here. Faye, she's now 12 and thinks she rules the house, but she doesn't. And I remember Friday was my daddy-daughter day. And Erica would go to work at that time, and I asked her, what am I supposed to do? And she said, keep her alive. And I said, okay, I think I could do that, right? And I just see that beautiful cheeky face, and I would feed her food and watch her, and some of the great memories of my life. And I remember one day I had to maybe use the restroom. So I said, Faith, I'm going to put you down, be a good baby. And I put her down, went to, who knows what I was doing. Don't tell my wife, right? I come back and I don't see Faith. I'm like, oh my goodness, Faith, Faith, where are you? Faith, where are you? She can't crawl, she can't walk. And next to her was this big pile of laundry. And I'm wondering, oh no, is she in that laundry? And I just start going, Faith, where are you? Faith. And I'm picking up clothes and I'm throwing shirts and I'm moving around. Faith, where are you? And I'm frantic and I'm frantic. And after what seemed like an eternity, I look under the crib and a little head pops out, smiles at me, and goes back under the crib. The first time she ever crawled was in that moment right there. And I had to sit down and catch my breath and think, oh my goodness, my heart is beating so fast. I just was at a loss for words. But what I felt this Thursday during our prayer day is God say, son, are you searching that frantically for my lost sons and daughters? Are you that passionate? Are you looking? Will you turn every table? Will you move every piece of would you move heaven and hell to go find my little ones? And at 1 p.m., a beautiful lady named Athena was praying at the cross. And she was just praying and crying. She says, this is the word of God. Go get my babies. Go get my babies. Go get my babies. And the word I want to share with you today, for every single one of us, go get his babies.